Okay, so I actually grew up in Baltimore, of all places, but loved my Spanish teacher. He was an amazing, amazing teacher in high school, and he introduced students to the language and to the culture, but also presented study abroad opportunities. And so the summer I was 15, I actually spent a month in Mexico, traveling, meeting other students, and then we had a student stay with us for a month. And so that's what got me interested in Mexico and Latin American history. And I'm still friends with that woman. So, yeah. So the really fascinating thing about Latin America is that it's really a blend of a multiplicity of cultures. So, of course, you have the Spanish and the Portuguese who bring in the European culture post-conquest. But you also have the indigenous cultures throughout the Americas, right? So everything from the Aztecs to the Incas to other groups throughout Latin America. Unfortunately, because of conquest and the diseases that the Spanish and Portuguese brought over, you had a lot of deaths amongst indigenous people. About 50 or 60 years post-conquest, 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas was dead, either due to disease or overwork. And because of this desire for labor, the Spanish and Portuguese brought enslaved Africans over to work on their plantations and in their mines. So we also have a huge debt to African culture to look at, to look at when we understand Latin American culture. So it's really a blend of indigenous culture, European culture, and African culture as well. So I think there's two things to understand. One is up until 1848, right, the whole Southwest and California was part of Mexico. So there's a tremendous amount of Latinos who live in the Southwest who aren't immigrants, who have not come in over the border. They've been living there for hundreds of years. So that's an important thing to understand, I think, when we're talking about the influence of Latinos on American culture. But we do have people coming in looking for a better life here in this country. Latinos as a whole, there's 60 million of them in the United States. They make up 18% of the population. They're the largest minority group in the United States. And so I think we feel that influence, not just in Texas or New Mexico or California. I think we feel that all over. I think there are scientific achievements that Latin Americans have contributed, starting back with the ancient civilizations of the Maya and the Incas. The Maya had tremendous astronomical achievements as well as architectural achievements. We all are very familiar with Lake Chichen Itza and the pyramids. If you look at the Incas, their architecture was so advanced that they didn't need like mortar for their bricks. They just fit them together, and you couldn't even fit like a piece of paper in between them. So I think there's a tremendous amount of scientific achievement pre-conquest that we don't think about. And post-conquest, I mean, there have been achievements in technology and science. For example, Mexican scientists contributed to the formulation of the birth control pill. We have, for example, in Cuba, they've had a tremendous amount of medical research that has been very important in the last 50 or 60 years. And of course, sports as well. So I think that it's important to see Latin America as contributing to science, to technology, to economic development. I mean, I love Mexican food. I love Brazilian food. I love the music as well. But it's more than just, food and music. I mean, I had mentioned the War of 1848 before. I mean, that's still something that Mexicans are upset about. But there's also been sort of this history of U.S. intervention into Latin America that has, I would say it's not like it was in the 20th century, but we still have a tremendous influence over economic development, political development in Latin America. But on the flip side, right, like the United States can't go it alone. Like they need Latin America or we need Latin America. We need raw materials. We need two of the biggest exports from Latin America are mining and agriculture. And that's crucial and critical to the U.S. economy. And so I think that improving, where needed, relationships with Latin Americans will be key to the United States continuing to be competitive. And of course, Latin Americans, play a huge role in U.S. culture and the U.S. population as well. So that can't be overlooked.
Okay, we want to make first, here's a taco.
Tomate.
Want to put a little oil on my grill so they don't stick my tacos. I want to make a quesadilla with al pastor meat. Okay, then I'm gonna use for the quesadilla tortillas. I'm gonna put it on this. The meat's already marinated, and we marinated for 24 hours. And I come early in the morning and cook by portions, so they'll be ready for lunch. And this is already, cooked, had the marination and everything. And this is how we make the quesadillas. As soon as the cheese is ready, that's ready, we wanna make it tacos. This is taco de asada. Taco al pastor. All right, and with always for the I'm gonna pass over there. I got my stuff from here. Let's see. We'll always top in with onion, cilantro, and lime, and then I go the salsa if you want, like salsa. Salsa, we got a red and green salsa. This is how we handle to the people. That's all. So this is that. This is the tacos. This is a quesadilla, and we cut it on we cut it on 4. Same thing, we use aluminum foil. And the same thing, we topping with lettuce and a pico de gallo, and that's how that is.
That looks awesome.
All right, this one, this. Give me the tacos too, baby, so I can show them back again. donde was the tacos. Okay, now we wanna make a torta. This is one of the papiro sandwich in Toluca, where we live. Can you give me a bread and a spoon for my beans, please? This is the bread we use. Okay, we put on the grill to grill off a little bit. Knife and avocado. Avocado. Jalapeno peppers. These beans we just make these beans and mash it for refried beans.
Will that last you the whole day, or you need to make?
No. We make batches. We make this one. They go fast, and then we get another one, going as soon as they're going. Same time the rice, they go pretty fast. Okay. Take some of this part, and wanna add some beans. Okay. Then over here, I wanna add some mayonnaise. Okay. There's some way we wanna make yes, asada again. Gonna put a little bit of flavor. And we wanna add some cheese. And when I add some cilantro and onions. On the asada we put cilantro and onions, and some of those we don't use it. On top of that, and now we're topping with the lettuce. Get some tomatoes. And we put jalapeno peppers. And I like to add some juice, a little bit juice, a little more flavor. And then we put avocado, which on the Mexican dish always avocado. All right. And I add a little bit salt because on the avocado they don't have no much salt, just a little bit, not much. And it's pretty much there's the torta. And you can order it in any with ham, chorizo, eggs with chorizo, al pastor, just name any meat, whatever you want to. And but any meat we put a different vegetable, stuff like that. Okay, now we cover Haiti a plate. Now this is ready to go out. All right, this is the torta.
I am from Esteli, Nicaragua. That's the north of my country. Esteli is well known for its coffee and cigars. Nicaragua is a small, it's a small country, but the biggest one in Central America. Nicaragua is probably the poorest in Central America because of natural disasters and wars. I am one of the blessed ones. Survived a war and earthquake. I survived the 1972 earthquake. My sister and I almost were killed in that earthquake. So I'm a survivor. My former home country is still going through civil unrest, like many other countries. Democracy is not there. Democracy is not there, and communism is vivid, lived every day in my country. I hope that through my helping the artisans in my country, that they will stay strong and that they will understand that one day they will be free. I got a degree, 2 degrees, 1 degree in computer electronic engineering, and another one in education. I worked in the field, in the electronic field, for 6 years in South Carolina, and the other field I worked about 15 years. I went to an artisan school 4 years as my hobby. I'm a learner. I love to learn, and so I learned how to make this beautiful jewelry. I crochet, I wire wrapped, and I do many arts, but it was my hobby. And when I decided to move to Lynchburg, then is when I just made a decision. I'm an entrepreneur, I know numbers, and I'll start a business. When you go into a business, it's not a one thing from one day to the next. You have to plan it. You have to do your research, what is the perfect place. I knew that I had to come over here to Lynchburg because of my children, to help them out. So what I decided was find out where they sold handcrafted items here in Lynchburg. And always the Lynchburg Community Market came up on my Google research. And yes, as soon as I arrived to Lynchburg, I went to the market and took my jewelry and showed it to Jennifer Kennedy, and she's like, we'll call you. They didn't have but one booth left, and they gave it to somebody else. Can you imagine that? But then they called me back, and I've been there 8 years. I started in one small booth, and then within a year, I grew to 2 booths. The people liked my jewelry. But then it came to my mind how many countries I have traveled, how many friends have I made, and how could I help these people? In my last school, I was event coordinator, so I met so many artisans. And I was like, all these people, all their art, their crafts, Lynchburg will love it. So I opened a artisan boutique, a fair trade boutique at the market. And that one I opened 2 years later. And this one, we've been here 3 years. We purchased the building. With fair trade, I don't know if you have learned anything about fair trade, but fair trade is about supporting third world countries. But fair trade is extending to the point that you can support local artisans. So if you come through my shop, you'll see that I have local arts too, from some of the artisans. But I do have from other countries like Turkey, England. I just try to find the best things that I don't see in other places here in Lynchburg. And I think as a business person, you have to have a vision. You have to have vision. And when I purchased this building, since I'm always involved in the community, I get involved in everything. You'll see me in everything because I get involved. And why? Because I want to know what's happening so I can be prepared. I join everything. International Festival, co-starters, Downtown Lynchburg Association. I get involved in everything. And when I heard about what's happening here, guess what? I remembered. I lived in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, and I said, oh my goodness, I am blessed. Let's buy the building, because in 5 to 10 years, Lynchburg is going to be #1. And we're closer and closer. I've been here 8 years. If there is something about Latins in general, we're very respectful of our elders. So respecting each other, respecting the country you're living in, follow their laws. To me that's very important, because if you don't want to do something bad in your home, why do you want to do it in somebody else's home? So to me, if you come to this country, you learn the language and you learn to live and be a positive member of society, and they'll see you that way. I have been here 8 years, and I have many friends in the city, many, and I have been involved in many different things. I met Guido through there, one of the in the international festival committee. So I appreciate everything I have received and friendships here through the city. You just need to be patient and do not feel that the world is against you. I think that's one big mistake that many people coming from different countries feel, that they are not given the tools to succeed. You have to succeed yourself. Everything starts here.
So my parents, or my brothers and I, our parents, came to the US in the 80s. They actually fled Chile from the dictatorship. So the way that Chile, like the neighborhoods are, everything's kind of behind gates. So like the individual homes would have a gate that you'd go in, and then inside is almost like a little, like not an hacienda, but like a, I don't know, like a house, but that had a huge yard in the front and in the back. And both of my dad's home and my mom's home were like that in Chile. Everything in Chile is fresh. So there's a farm right there, so you get tomatoes fresh, literally right next to where you live. It's not frozen from California, shipped to Virginia, and then you're buying it at the store, The quality and the flavor of produce and just of anything there is 100 times better than what you'll ever find here. That's one thing that I definitely always notice. And Chile is a beautiful country. If you've ever been there, the Andes are the first thing that you see when you land in Santiago, and it just takes your breath away. And that's it's a funny story that my parents, when they came here, and people were like, oh yeah, you're right next to the Blue Ridge Mountains. And my parents would be like, mountains? Those are hills. Compared to the Andes, not even close. But when he got to Lynchburg, my mom was working as a PT, and he was looking for work and not really having some success. They had brought some jewelry from Chile here to sell, to see if they could sell it, working with my grandfather on my mom's side. He was like the purchaser on the Chile side, which was cool. They started selling jewelry at the community market. So my dad had a little booth with my mom on the weekends that they would go and they would try to sell things. And then it's kind of how the store started is from that story. He was selling jewelry, bracelets and earrings and necklaces and whatever, anything from Chile. And it was mostly brass or copper, not so much sterling silver in those times. A lot of the jewelry in Chile was more with the cheaper metals, I would say, but still really beautiful metals. When you open any business, there's a risk, a huge risk, especially when you're new to a country, you don't speak the language, you're learning as you go. And you're in Lynchburg, which is not, especially when they were here in the 80s, not the most diverse place. I grew up learning both English and Spanish at the same time. So sometimes in English I would say things that don't translate properly, like little things, nothing major. But that I think was probably a challenge. And growing up in a very conservative town, I saw people discriminate against my father and my mother. And that was really hard. Not really against me a lot. Like I said, I have like an American look or whatever. So just when I was little, did they call me Mexican? Maybe I was darker then, because you get lighter when you get older, I don't know. But with my parents, I definitely witnessed discrimination here, and those looks of like because the way my parents and I would interact when we were out, I would always respond to them in English and they would speak to me in Spanish. So when you hear, especially when we were growing up and there were no other Latinos or other cultures here in Lynchburg, we would get weird looks. And like, I never really cared, and I don't think my parents ever really cared, because if they had, they would have spoken to me in English. I think they had that, not like that confidence in themselves that they weren't doing anything wrong. It was the other person who was doing something wrong. So yeah, those kinds of obstacles and witnessing that here were things that we all had to overcome.
When we grew up, there weren't that many immigrant people here. There weren't that many Latino, Latinx, Latin American people. When I was young, I felt like very isolated. There wasn't, since there weren't so many people, there wasn't a community per se, like in the sense that there is now. So it was a little more lonely, a little more isolated. Even within the Latino community, because there aren't a lot of Chilean, there's like only a few Chilean people here in town. So that's also another level of isolation. But a lot of that doesn't really matter once you're here, because I mean, American people don't understand like the nuances of Latin America really. So we're all just sort of seen as like the same thing, which ironically creates this sort of solidarity, even though it is through ignorance. But and then I went to Glass. So in Glass, it was like very different. But I would say like the last few years in Lynchburg have been like the most formative. I think Lynchburg is changing a lot. I think we're in like a very pivotal moment in like the history of this city that's sort of gonna set up how this community is gonna be over the next like few generations, you know? So that's how I feel about it.
Like for me, I have two cultures. So I have the US and then I have Chile. And they're different, but they complement each other, right? Without one, I don't know who without my Chilean side, I'm not sure who I would be, honestly. It's a huge part of who I am and who my family is. We embrace it, we celebrate Chile all the time, we follow soccer, we follow the news. You know, we followed all of this and stay in touch also with family in Chile. We have a ton of family there. But my experience, I think, is a lot different from people who just live here and grow up here, who have history here, because I have multiple perspectives, not just one. And I think that's part of the problem of all of the unrest and things that are happening here in the US right now, because people just don't know multiple sides of things and also don't want to listen, which is the other problem.
I think that immigrant people, like Latinx people, we still have a lot of power we need to build. We don't have like any representation in this city yet. We still don't really have a seat at the table in terms of a lot of the decisions made in the school system and with the city council and stuff. But like I said, the Latino community has changed so much. I mean, it's exploded. It's still exploding, and I think Latinx people are playing like a huge role in the growth of this city, and I don't think it would be growing the way it is without us, you know?
I would say to literally unabashedly do what you want. Try everything. If it fails, at least you tried it. My parents, like I said, they came from a huge struggle with the dictatorship, and they came to this country full of opportunity, experienced a lot of challenges, but they never once, I think, questioned themselves and questioned their integrity. I think if it's something that you are passionate about, that you're really honest about, that you want to do, don't let anyone stop you. My parents wouldn't have ever stopped with everything that they experienced here, being discriminated against and coming to a small town. Lynchburg has a ways to go, and without people like them and other Latinos, it's not going to keep growing in the way that we want it to. So this town needs you. Just do it.
Tomorrow we travel to the continent of Africa. There's still time to enter our daily contest by going to the address on the screen.